Although many experts now expect Saturday's poll result to be a cliffhanger in the House of Representatives, there's general agreement that the Greens are likely to win the balance of power in the Senate. Recent polling suggests that Greens support will be at its highest ever level. And the question that begs is, what price will they seek to extract from whichever party wins government? Matt Peacock reports on the implications of Green power.
G'day. Thank you.
For Dr Richard Di Natale, garden enthusiast, public health specialist and Australian Greens Senate candidate for Victoria, it may be a case of third time lucky.
I'm Italian, so I've got veggies going through my veins. We've got a very clear idea about who we are and what we stand for, and more Australians understand that. We're not here to essentially be a moderator between the two parties.
It has, yeah.
Last election, Dr Richard Di Natale narrowly missed out on a Senate spot because Labor preferenced Family First candidate Steve Fielding over the Greens. This time, he's almost certain to succeed after a Labor-Green preference swap. And he might not be the only one.
Whoever wins the election, the coalition will lose Senate seats and the Greens will obtain full control of the balance of power.
They are now the most organised other force in politics. They're starting to get some serious numbers. It's possible that they'll end up with 9 seats in the Senate.
But unlike the Australian Democrats, who held the balance of power for almost 2 decades, the Greens will want to impose their own agenda, warns the Financial Review's Laura Tingle.
They really aren't portraying themselves as the New Democrats, that is, as a bunch of legislators who are there to improve legislation. They really want to sort of be in a position where they can dictate the terms.
This is a very exciting but crucial vote for Australia's future.
The Greens leader, Bob Brown, is now the longest-serving party leader in Australian politics, and he's talking up the Greens' agenda.
And we're the one party with a vision for this nation, like Denticare, like high-speed rail, like a carbon tax, like getting this country into the 21st century. We should be the solar renewable energy driving force on this planet, instead of pushing more coal mines on rich farming lands as the big parties want to do.
The real problem will be if the Greens want to shut down coal-fired power stations and we don't have gas available to generate electricity. If we have a shortage of electricity generation in this country, it will not be filled by solar panels and windmills. That would be a disaster.
Free market advocate and former Labor Minister Gary Johns believes whomever wins government will have to pay the Greens a price, citing a promised feasibility study into a very fast train made by both major parties already as an example.
The Greens have suggested a very fast train. The major parties have said they will have a study of the viability of the train. So you can waste $100 million on the study, that's fine. If the study says no, to then go ahead and build it would be a disgrace. So the trick will be, can you stop the Greens at that point?
A backroom deal with the Greens is a deal with the devil, and I am not going to sell my soul for the sake of remaining in power.
Earlier this year, the Tasmanian Labor Premier David Bartlett made a deal with the Greens there sound impossible. But now 2 Greens sit with apparent harmony in his cabinet.
I think the problem the Greens have is that they're too much loved by their supporters and they're too much hated by their detractors. And what gets missed is that these people are quite astute and adept politicians.
According to Tasmanian author Richard Flanagan, the Greens represent a refreshing future for Australian politics.
And the choice really for both Labor and Liberal is whether they wish to engage with what the future is and the possibilities of the future, or whether they're going to become ever more gangrenous and the stench of their slow death fills our nostrils.
As concerns over global warming continue to mount, the failure of the Greens to support Labor's stillborn emissions trading scheme is cited as an example of their intransigence.
They essentially declared right at the beginning of the process about the emissions trading scheme that they'd rather vote it down than get a flawed scheme. And we've ended up with no scheme at all, and both sides of politics retreating at a great rate of knots. A lot of Green voters might think that that's not actually a very good outcome.
I get this something better than nothing, and of course, to use Tony Abbott's words, that's crap. That scheme would have transferred $22 billion from taxpayers to the big polluters who could increase pollution for the next decades. We saw that and we stood firmly against it, but we came up with a better alternative, which is a carbon tax which takes $10 billion a year off the big polluters and puts it into cushioning people against power price rises.
The senators elected on August 21 won't take their seats until the 1st of July next year, with the exception of the 2 territory seats. Now that means that the current numbers will stay in place until July next year.
That's unless the Green candidate wins in the ACT, still regarded as a remote possibility. What's perhaps more possible is a win in the lower house, with the retirement of Labor Minister Lindsay Tanner.
There are, frankly, 2 little girls and indeed 2 older kids who need me more than the country needs me.
In a tight parliament, a possibly hung parliament, that could actually be their power base rather than the Senate.
I think it's a frightening scenario. It's not one that I'd look forward to. We will get worse government than we've just experienced if the Greens hold the balance in both houses.
Look, things are going really well. We are a party at the moment that's on the move.
For the Greens, Dr Richard Di Natale, though, it could be the start of a new political era.
What we'd do is we'd get better outcomes for Australians because we'd have a third party in the Senate looking at legislation, scrutinising it and improving it.
Matt Peacock with that report, and that's the program for tonight.